We're recording. All right, are we ready? Ready to go? Okay, welcome everybody to tonight's City of Tumwater Planning Commission meeting for Tuesday, May 26, 2026. It's 8 o'clock and we're getting started. We had our tree board meeting just before this. I'll start with roll call. Commissioner Edwards?
Here.
Commissioner Kirkpatrick?
Here.
Commissioner Kotek is excused. Commissioner Nelson?
Here.
Commissioner Rounsley is excused. Vice Chair Staff?
Here.
And me, your chair, Commissioner Robbins. We've got a quorum, so we can move forward. Any changes to our agenda tonight? Anybody noticed? Okay. Let's go to approval of our minutes from last time. They're turning out really fast. Oh, thank you for getting those out. Any remarks, revisions, anything you want to clarify on the minutes? Or a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes, meeting minutes from May 12th, 2026.
Very good.
Second.
Great. It's been moved and seconded to approve the meeting minutes from May 12th, 2026. Last call for any comments. Okay, I'm going to call the vote. All in favor of approving our meeting minutes from May 12th, 2026, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Nope. Okay, meeting minutes are approved. Thanks, everybody. Let's go to commissioners' reports. Anybody want to come in with anything you've been doing or seeing about town you want to bring to our attention? Okay. Deputy Director's report? Okay, very good. Let's go to public comment. Do we have anybody in the room who would like to address the Planning Commission? Good deal. All right. If you would, please give us your name and your address and if you represent anyone.
Yes, my name is Christine Moffa. I live at 2246 79th Avenue Southeast, and that's in Tumwater 98501. And I'm representing Puget Sound Energy tonight. Ready? All right, I will read my comments. For over 150 years, PSC has served the region by providing safe, reliable, and clean energy for our customers. Over the decades, we have modernized our electric grid, and battery energy storage systems are a way to continue that work. Tonight, PSC urges the Planning Commission to bring amending Titles 8, 15, and 18 to the Tumwater Municipal Code to meet the city's stated goals in its comprehensive plan. PSC supports adding language in the TMC that supports climate element goals CL-5, CL-5.1, U-1, and U-1.1. These goals support the use of on-site renewable energy technology, increasing energy storage, improving energy grid resilience, and meeting our region's growing electricity demand. Updates in supporting these goals provide a permitting pathway for residential, commercial, and utility scale BESS. We can continue to provide safe, reliable, and clean energy to customers in Tumwater and throughout our service territory. Demand for electricity is growing, especially during summer heat waves and winter cold snaps. During those peak times, PSE can use the energy stored in batteries to continue serving our customers instead of buying more expensive power on the market. This will help PSE avoid outages. By 2030, the greater Northwest region, including Washington, will need 9 gigawatts of new power, which is roughly the state of Oregon's load currently. BESS are an important part of PSE's plan. Provide the reliable power our customers expect while delivering more of the clean energy required by Washington's aggressive clean energy requirements. By 2030, PSE projects the need for 1,500 megawatts of energy storage alone, or enough electricity to power several 100,000 homes. Currently, PSE's efforts include residential batteries like our PSE Flex battery program, where over 700 customers are helping provide energy to the grid with batteries and electric vehicles in their homes. Batteries have the potential to solve energy challenges we all care about. They can provide temporary backup power when we experience an outage, help businesses manage their usage, and much more. Also, BESS provides benefits to Tumwater residents and businesses. Jobs created by installing BESS help fuel our local building trades economy for the people who live here in Tumwater and throughout our region. PSC prioritizes the safety of our customers, employees, and our system. Our state energies code has safety regulations for these systems that were developed by first responders, engineers, and other key stakeholders in the energy industry. PSC also expects any type of battery connecting to our system to meet stringent safety standards. By committing to innovation now, our battery projects and other work to modernize the grid are creating a safe, reliable, and clean energy future for us all. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your being here and
Bet.
good ideas. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Any other comment? Is anybody online?
Yeah, we have
Oh.
two attendees.
Okay.
We can ask them if they'd like.
I can't see their name.
One is David Toyer, sorry, and one is Julian Law.
Where, would you like to address the planning commission tonight? If so, could you state your name, your address, and if you represent anyone? Couple of minutes. All right, let's go to the other person. Can you say the name again?
Julian Lowe.
Julian Lowe, if you'd like to address the planning commission, would you go ahead and state your name, your address, and if you represent anyone? Okay, well, we appreciate your being here tonight, and we will move on to the actual discussion of our ordinance number 2026, or excuse me, O-2026-008, 2026 Building Demolition Code. Is that right?
Can I give the person?
So since I'm between two very big things, I'll try to keep this as short as possible. My name is Brad Medrid. I'm the Director of Community Development. Bringing forth an ordinance that is a very focused ordinance. I'm sorry, we would have wanted another spoiling ordinance like the housekeeping ordinance that we had where we had 5 different topics, but we'll just do one on this time. The intent of this particular ordinance is to address a very specific situation that we have with our building code. We have a building demolition section of the building code, TMC 1550. One thing that is missing is a clear process for removing foundations as part of a building demolition process. We have had instances in the recent past where we thought we had worked out the owner removing the foundation when I removed the building, when in fact, for a variety of reasons, that didn't happen. Now that we have code enforcement issues regarding that, we don't have a mechanism to require somebody to remove the foundation. So these changes are intended to address that particular situation. So like I said, they're highly focused. There are additional edits that probably need to be done to the overall building demolition chapter. We're not going to be considering that now. It's a little bit more involved than we have staff time to deal with. So what I'd like to do tonight is go through the proposed amendments. This essentially is walking you through all of the amendments in the attached ordinance. If you have any specific questions or anything that you would like to have addressed that I can address tonight, I will try to do so. If you have questions that you think need to be addressed as part of the work session on the 9th, we can do that. If not, my recommendation would be at the work session, we just have you schedule a public hearing for the ordinance for the 23rd. The reason why we can leave it, the ordinance hearing at the 23rd, is the SEPA process won't be complete until the 21st. And I'd like to make sure the SEPA process is done before we go to a hearing. Back to the proposed amendments. In the definition section of the demolition chapter, we want to include the phrase including foundations in our definition of demolition. The additional sentence here that talks about when permit applications for replacement structures have been submitted to the city, evaluation does not include removal of foundation. The rest of the definition of evaluation focuses on the cost, how the value of the demolition itself is determined overall. So if they are removing the foundations as well as the building and not putting a structure in place, we want the valuation to include all of that. In particular cases where they're reusing the foundation, which they can do, but they're demoing the rest of the building, we want to have the ability to remove that portion of the valuation. That's what this particular sentence is intended to do. We are adding a new section to the chapter that deals specifically with foundation removal. Again, this is to be very clear that when a structure is taken out, all foundations and slabs must be removed unless otherwise approved by the building official. Again, if there's another purpose, or say, for example, the foundation is holding up a particular other item that they want to get rid of, we don't want to say remove the foundation and watch whatever it's holding in slide into the hole where the foundation was. So we want to have some flexibility for the building official to, in particular cases, condition a demolition. Again, we also would like to make sure that if foundations can be reused, and they have submitted plans to do so, that we have that in place. We've also made some amendments to the application requirements, including foundations and the items required on the site plan. We've also added in the definition of the written works for the schedule for demolition, how the site will be addressed after demolition, including removing foundations, final grading, and erosion control. In terms of our process for the ordinance, we have issued the SEPA checklist on the 12th of this month. The SEPA DNS was issued on the 22nd. Field phase went on June 11th. Excuse me. The notice of intent that was issued to the Department of Commerce was also submitted on May 12th. We expect that process to be done by July 11th, which is before when we anticipate the council taking final action. So again, your schedule, work session on June 9th, hearing on the 23rd, and then in July, we would go to the council for their review and approval. Were there any questions on the material I presented?
Yes, Commissioner Kirkpatrick.
My question is, we've clarified the definitions that are there, and one of the things we clarify is that we're including foundations, but we don't have a definition of foundations. I don't know in particular whether pilings are specifically included in a foundation or not. I would think that the developer would want to know that before they come to the city to ask the question.
So that is actually a very good point, and I apologize. I think in a previous draft, we did have a definition of foundations in there, but I think that's important to add.
And do you believe pilings should be included or not? I'm curious.
I will talk with my building official about that, whether or not we want to take out a piling that's 50 feet in the ground or.
Right, that's what I'm concerned about. It's not an inexpensive process.
Or whether it's truly necessary as part of this process. Again, we're more concerned with the safety hazard created by the void space.
We're sort of doing a conditional use presentation here, and the plan of the city is you define the conditional use in advance, so the developer can look and see what is included.
We'll go ahead and address that. So my suggestion then is for the work session, I'll bring back that definition as part of the ordinance.
Does the ordinance anticipate partial reuse, partial demo.
I think that's where the flexibility is built in for the building official, work through that, if that's possible.
You say you wanted us to schedule the hearing or give you the okay for
We will,
tonight?
I think
Okay, we'll do that in June.
schedule it at the work session,
Okay.
so. So I don't want to dash, between all the exciting events, but
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to our item number 9, the battery energy storage.
Good evening again. Oh. Okay, sometimes if we don't touch it, it gets better. Thank you so much, Commissioners. It's great to be with you tonight and present this topic. It's battery energy storage systems. You'll hear it referred to as BESS in some cases, and they're really interchangeable. It's just an acronym, but we chose to not use the acronym throughout the language just to keep it clear and so you know what we're talking about. I am joined by Alyssa Jones-Wood, who is our sustainability manager, and she is has been working with me on these code concepts. So right now, today, we don't have code for you. We wanted to bring concepts forward to discuss those before we develop code, because there is a chance that what you hear tonight and what you hear from the community may lead you to the option that we don't need to adapt our code. And that's an option. And then what we do with that is we bring that to council, and then they discuss your recommendation, and then they make a determination. So there are a couple different ways. Change the code or not change the code is the main question tonight. So let's see here. Is this?
We get the tag team.
Yes.
The notes in between. I don't
Oh,
have to read off of my phone.
No, that's great.
Thank you.
Well.
Good. Battery energy storage systems, commonly referred to as BESS, are systems that store electrical energy for later use. They are capable of charging from the electric grid or from renewable energy sources such as solar, and then discharging that energy when it's needed. We heard a lot of what I'm going to share with you today on the pros of BESS from the public comment provided by Christine. Importantly, the electricity stored in a battery is not tied to a specific fuel source, so it's different than something like a diesel generator that can only provide this power stored and then combust with diesel. A battery can hold energy from the grid. It can hold energy from the grid that's fossil fueled. It can store energy from the grid that's renewable. It can be attached directly to solar power, for instance. It's flexible on the fuel source. BESS range widely in size and application. On the smallest scale, they're in homes. Residential systems that could be paired with rooftop solar. Oftentimes, this is the way to make sure that your household, in times of power outages, doesn't have an outage. You have a backup battery so that you can then have power when your neighbors may be out of power. On a larger scale, they can serve commercial buildings, community facilities, and critical infrastructure, such as fire stations and libraries. Here in Tumwater, I have overseen projects to do solar plus battery storage feasibility assessments for this building that we're in, the other fire station, City Hall, and the library, because all of them serve emergency functions. Only 3 of them have backup power at all. Our only cooling center in the city is the library, and it has no backup power. Batteries would be a wonderful way, batteries and solar would be a wonderful way to provide that backup power to make sure that during heat waves, we have available electricity and also reduce the overall energy bill. But I diverse. At a large scale, utility-size systems support the regional electric grid by balancing supply and demand. From a planning perspective, BESS are best understood as flexible infrastructure. They don't generate electricity themselves, but they charge when the electricity is provided to it, and then it can discharge when needed. It helps our electrical system and our community pursue climate resilience and growth goals at the same time. Next slide.
Okay. So I want to talk to you a little bit and provide you with a legal framework for battery energy storage systems. So we have ample federal guidelines, and what we noted as we were working through the different jurisdictions that have codes that are related to battery energy storage systems, as well as the Washington State codes, they all point back to these codes and/or adopt these codes verbatim. So the couple of the big ones are the National Fire Protection Agency. We have both Code 70, which has to do with electrical applications, and we have Code 855.
It's 855.
Okay, 855 or 885? 855, get my numbers right. So those two are huge sections of code that really speak directly to this. 855 is particularly for energy storage systems, and there are sections that particularly deal with BESS in there. We also have the National Electric Code, so that has to do with how electricity is handled safely and installed and all those things. The wiring, grounding, safe connections, all that stuff. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration, also known as OSHA, it addresses, oh, there it is, thank you. It addresses worker safety, and so as we have, electrical professionals installing these things, they have also, they have their installation guidelines to adhere to within their own workplace. So then we have the Underwriters Laboratory. So this one is a little bit nuanced because it's not something that we see a whole lot in our realm, but these are product standards. And the product standards go through testing, and the Underwriter Laboratories provide standards so that these products are safe to a certain standard. And this is a national laboratory, and they have a wide range of products, and usually are electrical and electronic equipment. And I double checked, and yes, my laptop cord is UL certified, so no worries there. We're good. Yep. So next. So in Washington State, we have also a handful of standards that talk about how how Washington State is
Taking safety of BESS seriously.
thank you, providing codes for this level of energy storage. So we have the Washington Fire Code, and that adopts the International Fire Code, and it includes those provisions for lithium-ion batteries. So that's lithium-ion batteries and that level of storage, which tends to be one of the ones that we have some concern about because of the fire potential for that type of technology. So the Washington State Building Code contains additional provisions governing lithium battery ion storage as well. So both the State Fire Code and the State Building Code have provisions. And the State Energy Code is currently under review. So they will provide updates, I think, in the next couple of years. But our building official is going to meetings and learning more about what the state wants to do with the Energy Code. The Energy Code also has the standards for solar and battery energy storage systems. So it's all potentially the expectation is those will be included in the new standards. The Washington State Department of Ecology has environmental standards for noise. And so when we think about electric and mechanical equipment in our neighborhood and our environments, sometimes we associate that with noise. So we wanted to point out that that is in the Washington State Environmental Ecology, Department of Ecology has established standards for that, and then we adopt those standards in our noise control ordinance and Tumwater Municipal Code Title 8. So then the Washington State Labor and Industries regulates worker safety. So as workers are connecting systems, and they have regulations for electrical work. So that's general electrical work, not specific to BESS, but it applies as these are electrical systems. So we also have our neighboring, next slide. We have our neighboring jurisdictions working on codes as well, because we have in our region interest in in this development in our region. So we want to make sure that as we're working with other jurisdictions, we are listening to the feedback that they have received from stakeholders, and we're participating in those conversations so that we can have, you know, model code in our area that is valuable and that we can implement. So one of the model codes that this group of stakeholders, particularly our fire professionals, fire chiefs, have been working on with the Thurston County, has been the Thurston County Model Best Code. So they've been working at that for, I think it was 18 months, and then they took a hiatus here about 6 months ago. If I'm not totally unfamiliar with the timeline.
We did meet again in March.
Oh, in March. Okay, so that was the last meeting. And the last meeting resulted with, here is what we have right now. Here are some of the issues with it or things that we can't agree upon. So if you want to do it, take it and change the issues to your own liking. Is pretty much the conclusion of those meetings. So we have Olympia, Thurston County, and Lacey all looking at adopting their best codes in the next couple of years using these model codes and then adjusting them for their jurisdiction. Then,
as Christine so eloquently rattled off all of our letter number acronyms from the comprehensive plan, our comprehensive plan provides a strong policy foundation for considering battery energy storage systems. The climate element promotes energy resilience and the expansion of renewable energy technologies, explicitly identifying battery storage as a tool to improve grid reliability. The utilities element emphasizes coordination with private utility providers and encourages innovation to meet anticipated demand efficiently. The land use element focuses on orderly, cost-effective development that provides and protects adjacent uses, environmental quality, and community character. Together, these policies support thoughtful consideration of where BESS should be located as energy infrastructure that is essentially needed for our clean energy transformation. We want to make sure that it is done in a way that is respectful of adjacent land use and also considering different economic aspects that makes a community whole, including employment and general commercial, for instance. So this is a way, adopting a code that allows battery energy storage systems is a way that we can turn the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan into actionable opportunities for our community, which is helpful. Next slide, please. And battery energy storage systems matter today because electricity demand is increasing both overall and in specific periods of time. Daily demand typically spikes in the morning and evenings, normally when people come home from their, assuming that everyone works a 9 to 5, which is not what everyone works, but that's when they tend to peak, as well as seasonal peaks that are becoming more pronounced during hotter summers due to air conditioning use, and also colder winters with more electrification of our HVAC or heating systems. Traditionally, utilities have relied on fossil fuel powered peaker plants or purchasing energy on the market to meet these short periods of high demand. However, as Christine mentioned, a state policy under the Clean Energy Transformation Act, we need to have clean energy. We need to have it very soon. We need to have it all the time. Battery storage provides a non-fossil fuel alternative for allowing energy to be stored during off-peak periods to then be used during peak demand. For communities like Tumwater, battery storage also supports resilience during power outages by maintaining electricity for essential services. Because BESS do not rely on behavior changes to be effective, they can deliver immediate results, which is really helpful because a lot of things in my world in terms of climate effort, they rely on people to do the right thing all the time, some of the time. This is something that we can essentially create the policy framework for, and we can deploy it and start using it and have the benefits soon. I've mentioned all the things from my next slide with this slide. So There's a picture of a light bulb to remind you that energy is a valuable resource and that Puget Sound Energy isn't the only player in terms of making sure that the clean energy transition happens. We have to also provide conditions that allow the things that they need and others, individual homeowners, libraries, to be able to use this resource. So I have two visual examples here because I'm a visual learner, and they do use electric vehicle charging because that's another thing that does add more demand to our electricity grid. Now with the gas prices being as high as they are, I've heard a lot of people talking about moving over to electric vehicles if they don't already, and this is something that we have additional demand for. So this is a visual example of fast charging that uses a high capacity transmission line to provide 150 kilowatt vehicle chargers. This infrastructure is sized for peak demand, not necessarily average use. Without BESS, fast charging requires kind of oversizing the grid, which can limit siting flexibility and increase costs for communities and developers. We, for instance, put in a solar-powered off-grid charger at Pioneer Park because we would have a difficult time trenching through the athletic fields to be able to put in an EV charger there. PSE is going to actually pull some energy straight off the line and do a pole charging there because they have access to the electrical energy at higher voltage than the infrastructure that we had. So this is an example of when additional resources and access to energy that can help things become possible that wouldn't be possible otherwise. Next slide, please. This is a smaller grid connection feeding that same amount of charging for the vehicles here because it has an on-site BESS. The BESS can deliver high power to vehicles as needed, and the energy is stored continuously and discharged intermittently. This reduces the need for major grid upgrades, enables more flexible siting, and smooths out demand spikes. This makes it so that this property might not have needed to get a new transformer in order to have fast chargers. They might be able to do it from the existing infrastructure, add a battery, and they can provide the ample power. Battery storage shifts EV charging from a grid-constrained problem to a flexible site-ready solution, and that's not something that can only be applied for EV charging. I know not everyone can relate. I really enjoy not knowing how high the gas prices are right now because I drive an electric vehicle, but this can help with other difficult siting. So if a business wants to move or a home and there isn't enough electricity to provide the peak all the time, battery can help make it so that there's no bottleneck in terms of that particular utility and that doesn't necessarily have to be a cost constraint.
All right, so we're really here to talk about, so what does this mean in Tumwater? You know, we have a lot of information now for you about, in general, about BESS, but when we're talking about how it applies to Tumwater, we have a couple of chief concerns. So the thing we need to really put foremost is that these energy storage systems are categorized by their capacity. So they're an emergent technology, and the capacity really stipulates what the footprint of that, what the unit or that system is going to look like. So capacity really is one of the chief factors here. And then the physical scale really is dependent on that capacity for the time being. Now, we want to keep in mind that as the technology improves and that is happening very rapidly, then that scale may change. So the physical scale might be different depending on whether we have solid state batteries or if we have hydrogen power that feeds into the batteries. And I think that would be a fuel source. But anyway, all these things are coming up. And then the other piece that we wanted to be really cognizant of is the accessory versus the primary use. So when we're thinking about an accessory use, it's attached to another use. So we're thinking about whether it is for the purpose of supporting the residents, the business, or the industry, or whether it's for the purpose of storing energy on its own and supporting the grid or utility function. So I want to kind of keep those two things separate. When we're talking about a primary use, we're talking about those utility-based uses. So other factors that kind of think about where BESS could be located in our community are whether or not we have adjacent supportive facilities. So they do need a power source. They don't generate energy, they just store it. So they would need to have access to the grid somehow. They also
Or solar power.
or solar power,
Yep.
yes, or another generation source.
Yeah.
Right, or another generation source. So we also want to consider that any incompatible land uses nearby. So when we think about BESS, some of the incompatible land uses or less compatible land uses may be, if it's a very large BESS system, it has a little bit potentially higher risk, then it may be that high density residential developments would place more people at a greater risk in a closer proximity to those systems. Whereas if we had if we didn't have high density residential systems right beside a high energy, a high capacity BESS system, then it would be potentially less risk.
Something?
Yes.
So what are the risks?
I was just going to get into that. So I would like to provide a reminder that all energy storage has some sort of risk. Gas stations could blow up at any time and also release noxious fumes. Lithium-ion batteries are harder to put out. Most of these systems have fire suppression within their contained systems, but with all energy storage, there is a risk. Like Dana mentioned, there are so many different fire codes, layered upon fire codes, layered upon fire codes, to make it so that these are much reduced in terms of risk. And honestly, the news media blows the frequency at which batteries and electric cars catch on fire very much out of proportion. There hasn't been one in a great number of years in terms of a utility scale BESS. When it happens, it's a problem, but we're taking all of the steps to neutralize that as much as possible, including some future training for our fire staff to make sure that they know exactly how to respond.
So I'll just dial that back because I still see a couple of questioning eyes. So one of the risks that we're talking about has to do with thermal runaway, and because of the way these systems work in series, and they're small units attached to a small unit attached to a small unit that all work together, and because the energy capacity generates heat, then you have you're setting an environment.
A domino.
Yeah, you're setting an environment that will has the potential to have a catastrophic level fire. So again, those incidents are rare. They had been, and we can. I mean, if you're looking for some of those risk stats, we can bring that to you. We did put a little bit of the fire information in the staff report, so if you want to review it there. We also talked to our fire chief and got his concerns. A couple of the things that he mentioned as he was working through this with us is that he was concerned if these systems are installed in basements, even if the electrical code and L&I say it's fine. He had concerns that would actually cause more safety concern for his employees and his staff, so that if they're not aware that a energy system is there, it can trap gas potentially if it's on fire, and then also cave in. So if the fire is below the floor, then it damages the structure of the floor.
So this is sounding very dire and scary right now. It's helpful for us to note that not only did we talk to Chief Hurley about this and our building official, that they've been with us the whole way in terms of developing these recommendations, and they gave us the sign off on the recommendations that we've presented to you tonight. So if that helps.
Are we taking questions yet, or do you want to finish your presentation?
We can get to the end and then.
Okay, so, yes.
Okay. All righty, so
I think that's not right.
we want to kind of walk through a few of the standards or the concepts of standards that we want to present. These are very, I don't want to say theoretical, but they are very much available for modifying. So the first residential scale system would be at 0 to 80 kilowatt hours. And the way that was determined is that the limit of one installation is 20 kilowatt hours. Yet you can have many installations in one residence. So you can have an installation in the basement, according to the Washington Fire Code. You can have an installation in your garage. You can have an installation on the side of your house, and you can have an installation in an exterior shed. So that's how we got to 4 installations potentially.
The max.
The max, yeah. So these systems can be anywhere from the size of a gym bag and very small, and just something that people plug in on a hot summer day to make sure that their AC doesn't go out, all the way to a Tesla system that sticks on the wall and is like a utility box. So the Washington State Fire Codes restrict residential use, and that's the 2020 I was talking about. And that is why, one of the reasons that we've decided that we needed to differentiate between the accessory uses and the primary use. So accessory uses for residential have Washington State Fire Code standards that we have mirrored with these concepts. All right, so the next scale would be the medium scale. That's 80 to 600. Oh, pardon?
0 to 600.
Oh yeah, sorry. So, no, that's fine. We, again, these are molding and changing. So it could be 80 to 600, but our recent review of these charts showed that if we did 0 to 600, but then limited it to only non-residential uses, then that allows the smaller units to be available also to commercial uses. So, you're looking at anywhere from a refrigerator at that 80 kilowatt size to several shipping containers out in a parking area or behind a building or those kind of areas.
Similar to the size of diesel generators that have backup power for structures now.
Mm-hmm. So these level of systems are capable and have the energy capacity to serve our small businesses or our community services, like the library. Our library is one of the only cooling stations that we have in Tumwater.
The
only.
one.
And so if they, during a heat event, if their energy is compromised or if we have a lack of energy at that time, then we're losing the ability to provide that to people who don't have air conditioning in their homes or need a heat refuge. So, and these are allowed under Washington State Fire Code for non-residential uses at this size. So the utility scale would be anything over 600 kilowatt hours, and the scale varies. I mean, it can be absolutely acres and acres and acres. I was driving back from Arizona and saw as far as the eye can see with these white containers and this shimmery solar unit, peripherally. And on one hand, I was like, whoa, what is that? And now I'm learning more about it. So this scale is capable of supporting a substation in our community, and similar to some of the uses that we've seen being requested in project applications.
This one here, pictured here, is 10 megawatts. So in terms of the number of shipping containers that you see, this is a large system, not quite the Arizona system that Dana was mentioning, but this would be substantially helpful for our community.
Yeah. And this system, this requires additional standards, or there are additional tests and additional requirements under Washington State Fire Code. So it doesn't just have to meet the same standards of the medium and small systems, which are a little bit reduced. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we go on. So the zone districts, we want to make sure that this technology was available for people to use wherever they are, just depending on the scale and the application. So we wanted to not restrict it to any zone district depending on the type of BESS. So we wanted to allow the residential site systems to be in any zone district, the medium site systems to be only restricted as far as their accessory use. So they would be accessory to non-residents only. And then the utility systems, we wanted to make sure that they had the capacity to support nearby substations. However, when we looked at the map and saw where our substations were and where the zoning was associated with those substations, we don't have a utility level zone district. So we would have to allow it in, over a broad spectrum of districts. Yet, we know that there are some districts that we want to prioritize for extra protection. So things like our open space, our rural sensitive, our residential sensitive resource areas. We wouldn't want to allow something like this in that area because it may promote clearing of those areas or a land use that isn't gentle or sensitive to the environmental constraints there. And then we also want to separate this use from high density residences and our manufactured housing to protect and promote the folks that may live there that are in a more dense living conditions. So it also, then we have a lot of people, like if in the event that we have a fire, then there are more people affected by that incident.
Also similar to what we were talking about with the tree code, we're in a housing crisis, we're in a climate crisis. Those are our most affordable housing types, and there is a balancing game, not really a game, a balancing act of allowing things that will help with energy resilience while not taking up land that could be served by other goals, such as tree retention for green spaces and making sure that affordable housing remains affordable. So there are multiple reasons why there are some proposed zones that some of the larger systems aren't going to be next to, or there would be additional buffering between that. So that is thoughtful, not arbitrary.
Yes, and again, very much up in the air about whether that's something that you can support or you would want to change.
And can I add one thing about substations?
Sure.
The utility scale, they can't just go in the middle of a field somewhere. They need to be connected to the substation, so it's very likely that the utility scale BESS will be immediately adjacent to substations, and that was part of our thoughtfulness. Just wanted to say that explicitly.
So proposed setbacks are included in those additional requirements with the large-scale BESS. So they can include as many as, in the NFPA, they're at 10 feet, but with our urban density, we would want to provide as much of a setback as we already have for our substations. And so mirroring those same setbacks in this code would keep them at the same standard. And then the residential and the medium scale have their own standards, and they also require vegetation clearing just because of the heat. All right, so safety regulations come from the fire protection, National Fire Protection Agency, and the other codes we already listed. Being aware of time, so I want to move a little quicker. The utility scale BESS in this case has, they have to develop an emergency management plan, and they will have to work with a fire marshal or a designee to make sure that their plan is acceptable. So they have an additional layer of approval. And then the medium systems have to have the fire marshal approval as well, but no emergency management plan. And then the residential scale, we would let labor and industries continue to regulate that as they do currently. All right. So proposed screening. This is for visual appeal of our neighborhoods to make sure we don't have like mechanical equipment just on roofs coming away and doing its thing. We limit this in all other types of mechanical equipment as well, HVAC systems and the like, on multifamily or commercial buildings, and that is in our citywide design guidelines. So then those uses would also have the same citywide design guidelines matching those design standards. So really, again, not rewriting anything, just matching up, like what do we already have that fits this purpose? And then utility scale, then vegetation would be cleared, and then maintaining that fire-wise landscape. So fire-wise being selective vegetation that is not prone to catching on fire and that kind of thing. So making sure it's green, making sure it's not impervious surface, and that kind of thing as much as possible.
And that was a specific request from our fire chief.
Right. And then the residential and medium scale BESS would have no fences required, but the utility scale would have their, the National Fire Protection Association 7-foot fences with the proper signage and all of those requirements that are already in code. Right. So proposed noise and lighting would come from our citywide design guidelines and from our noise standards in Title 8 as well for the Tumwater Municipal Code. So again, already in code, just applying a new use to that code.
And we did some research when we were working on the staff report, and some jurisdictions require some noise testing prior to development or after development, and all of them showed, all of the ones that we could find, sure there are others, all the ones we could find showed that it was well below the maximum decibels that our code allows for.
All right, so another piece of this is what happens when we're done with the BESS? Where does the BESS go and how do we manage that? So that's where decommissioning and ownership changes come in. So with the residential scale, there wouldn't necessarily be a need to do that. With the medium scale, we're just going to recycle, or we're going to require that those electronic equipment be e-cycled so that it's not an additional burden on the landscape and that it could be turned into something new. And then the utility scale would have a full-scale decommissioning plan that is required under the NFPA 855. And the bonding and then the electronics recycling are additional requirements that we worked with to put in there. They are recommended under the, I believe, the Tumwater or the Thurston County model code as well. So it's not like we're going out and above and requiring extra. It's something our whole region is supportive of.
I think we all learned with the brewery that a decommissioning plan is a good idea.
And so then ownership changes of the utility scale BESS only would require that the new owners sign off on and agree to the conditions of the agreements that were made upon development. So there's the fire management plan, or there are a fire testing plan. There are a few different plans that are required and kind of have ongoing maintenance requirements and things like that. So that would be passing over to the new owners as well as a condition of their sale. All right.
You want to talk about next steps before we go to questions?
Yeah, sounds great. So the next steps here, we will take your recommendation to the City Council. I believe we're scheduled for June 2nd or 9th?
9th.
Yeah, June 9th. And so at the June 9th meeting, we'll relay your comments and take them to the City Council.
Okay, so I'll start off with, it seems like we're curtailing some of our usual process with a briefing, a work session.
The
code.
No,
Yes.
this isn't the this is just concept level. So
Okay.
thank you. Next steps would be we go to City Council with the same presentation to say, how do you think about this? Let us get your yes or no. Do we proceed? That's all. And then the proceed means bring us draft code and we'll do the briefing, the work session, the hearing, and all the things.
And one
Yeah.
reason why we're doing that is that this isn't something that's required of us by the state to do. A lot of our code work is. This is something that we chose to do to be proactive, to work on implementing our climate element, our utilities element, our land use element, done an approved work plan. So it's a little different.
It's a different process for sure, because we want to make sure that we don't go through all the work of writing the code and then hear our community say, we don't want this.
It's the gut
Yeah.
check and initial direction from both you all and City Council.
All right.
Oh, wait, thanks.
Let's go to questions or comments. Our vice chair staff had something a little while ago.
I was just wanting to comment, like, all of our phones have lithium batteries, or most of them do, and airplanes, ran into this years ago, where they actually had something in their systems that had lithium batteries and had thermal runaway and it had issues with it, and that's why you can't take them on airplanes. I have 2 electric cars and have no concern of my electric car combusting. I'm glad you answered the question about basements, because I do have a nice basement that I would love to put a battery the size of this space in. However, I know the fire chief would not be. But I would be interested in seeing how I could fit an 80 kilowatt hour battery and get some good incentives for it, because I have solar on my house, I have all these different pieces. I'm hoping this just becomes easier as we move forward, because that's why I do not have a battery in my house right now. It's not very easy to do that.
It's also possible that there are residential systems that have been installed in basements in Tumwater, because we didn't have any governing code about that, and we didn't have the conversation yet. It's
Thingies that are-
likely.
Where are these manufactured?
Right.
Where are these battery storage units manufactured?
It varies. It's a global market.
Are they in the US?
Some may.
Some may. So that's why the UL codes are so critical. They have to meet UL codes standards in order to be, to be installed. And that's one of the codes that L&I would check when they're installing them. So that is one of those protection pieces. So with that stamp on it, then we know that it is covered.
Guess that if there aren't local regulations to permit this, that it can be permitted through the state.
No, we haven't yet.
Through the for a residential size system, Labor and Industries handles the electrical permits and the inspection. And without us having code, they're following just electrical code standards. And we know that there are battery energy storage systems installed residentially in Tumwater already, which is something that if anyone's listening and you have one of these, please reach out to us, because our fire department wants us to put a sticker on your meter box so they know before they enter your home for any emergencies.
I think what Sharon was referring to, though, is that the state does have code, and they have a pathway, and I believe this is for all BESS, so even utility scale BESS, that they can use a secondary pathway and circumvent our code. So what another reason why we want to bring this to you is that we want to make sure that our code meets our goals for our community, but then also has a clearer pathway so that developers want to use our code, and it is it's not as arduous as the state code would be, and then we can control the parameters, and we can have that communication with the developers. Like Alyssa said, if we need to put a sticker there, then we get to put that determination on, and we get to meet those goals.
And that is the Washington State Energy Facility Site Evaluation Council,
Thank you.
FSEC.
I had several questions, I'm sorry, about safety and security. You had mentioned that the medium size could just be plopped into a parking lot or behind a building. And that to me is a little worrisome, because there's vandalism that happens. There's curious teenagers. There's people who really disagree with this. And I think there needs to be, that needs to have the same kind of security fences around it, whatever is required to be required in all locations except perhaps a residential home, because they can decide that on their own.
May I ask a follow-up question? Would you like us to do that for other energy storage that could also be vandalized, such as diesel generators?
Probably. Yeah.
Would that be up to the building owner to assume that level of risk, though?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
Private.
Like a private, you want to take that risk and not have it
yeah,
secured.
I mean, this is a public thing rather than a private.
We do require people to put a fence around a swimming pool.
Okay.
If you can require people to put a fence around a swimming pool, you can require people to put a fence around a generator. We're doing it right now.
You absolutely can.
That's a good point. Thank you.
I just wanted to make sure that we're serving different.
Is that it's, I was really confused as I was reading the materials, and I think it's really important in terms of the code, if the council says go ahead and develop code on this, to help describe the circumstances where we anticipate there would be people or entities wanting to use it, whether at a residential scale, a small business scale, a commercial scale, an industrial scale, whatever the thing is, so that we know what we're dealing with. I think that's that was not jumping out at me to start with. If the city wants to acquire stuff, I don't, all that kind of thing. That I think that's an important part of what needs to be discussed in the future, and have that be obvious. We're talking about the code contemplates those different scales of use.
Perfect. Thank you. That's very helpful.
Mr. Patrick.
You have more?
I have more, but you ask, because you might ask.
Okay.
I've got a bunch.
My problem with getting my hands around this whole thing, we started out, is that you several times say that Title 18 zoning does not currently allow battery energy storage systems. I guess my problem is, you maybe answer the question, when you say it doesn't allow, but it also doesn't prohibit. And, in my mind, not allowing something means you prohibit it, but apparently that's not the case. The fact that we don't allow it means that it's going to happen no matter what we say.
Unless it's just silent on the matter. What I understand is
Our code, if it doesn't say explicitly that it's allowed, then it is not allowed. That's the way our.
But it's all over the place, you say, in Tumwater.
There are some
Permitting pathways.
But
Oh.
also, residential electricity permits, we don't deal with, L&I deals with, so they don't go through the city for that particular permit. So it's
But they
a
could.
gap. The gap now that we're hoping to correct, because it is falling through the cracks right now in terms of the city knowing where these are.
Is the city then going to have to develop some new section of expertise to do something like that, what L&I does now?
Oh, well, we wouldn't assume what L&I does, but we would add the pieces that we want, like,
Zoning
for
review.
example, zoning review, or not allowing them to be installed in basements. So then we would work with L&I and get information about where those are being installed, and then inform L&I that it's not allowed in our city's basements, and they would have to comply.
That's interesting. We can tell the state what to do.
to an extent. All right. Is it my turn? You have more, right? Go ahead.
I do, but I don't want to.
I'll ask one. Another big thing that I've noticed here right off the bat, and I have a lot of little tiny bits too, which we'll get into in an eventual work session. But I would like to see. I see you have a couple of slides on benefits, but I didn't see anything on cons, the risks. And I don't want to just have, some random statement. I'd like to see data about that. What, numbers of incidents in a span of time, or the type of severity, that hazardous materials, the fire, the whatever it is, the vandalism, the terrorism, the whatever, earthquake, whatever it is. I would like to see what are those risks, the cons, the costs that we would either be taking on to have this kind of code, or acquiring some of these systems. What does that amount to? So, yeah, I'd like to see the balance there, and I'd like to see it be data. With data, not, it's not a risk, or it doesn't happen often. I want to see data.
We can do that. Would you also like us to include some information on the in-unit fire suppression and the mechanisms that have been integrated to reduce the risk?
I think that's all fine, but if we're talking about risk, I don't care so much about what the system contains in its guts. I want to know, how frequent is there a problem? Okay, how bad was the problem?
Who was injured?
How many got killed or injured? How many fish were poisoned? From leakage of hazardous materials or what have you. That kind of thing. So I think that would be relevant to have the data, about those kinds of risks so that, you can balance. And maybe it's rare, great. But we want to know what's the cost, the risk and cost. And I mean dollar cost, but also, medical, environmental, whatever the heck kind of risk that are out there to help weigh, is this something that's desirable in our community? And maybe it is, maybe we need to bear that cost, bear that risk, but you want to know.
Okay. Can I ask a clarifying question? Is this something that you would like us to take forward to the city council, this information, or would you like us to return to it before you decide?
I think if we go forward, I hope you represent a comment like that to city council.
Absolutely.
When you see them in a week or whenever, a week or two. But then if we do go further, which I kind of expect we probably will, I guess, I'd really like to see that developed in some way.
Okay.
Solid information.
Already have it written in past drafts.
So, right? But I would expect the council's probably going to say the same thing. They want to know, because, for example, the city at risk legally, if they've got a code out there that's somehow weak with some risks, that they tolerate too much risk, is the city liable? Don't know. Okay, so at a minimum, so let alone if somebody dies or is injured. Okay, so those kinds of things are, I think, important to find out and report on.
You too. That was exactly, sorry to jump in. That was exactly what I was thinking too. I think you put that so well, right? I think that if this is an issue that requires a lot of thought, and a lot of people are going to have, want that data and want to know in order to kind of have that full discussion about it. So getting that would just be super helpful.
Thank you, Commissioner Edwards. More questions?
Well,
just some time.
Yeah, I was writing them down here. And some are just really basic questions that I just think the public will want to know. First of all, I'm assuming PSE is going to purchase, and these are their batteries, not the city. Am I wrong in that?
We don't have specific projects in mind. This could be anyone.
A business would purchase. When we're talking about what happens here, too many times, in my opinion, is the loss of power during storms. I haven't experienced it so much in hot weather, but during storms, there are specific neighborhoods that are well known that lose their power more than other neighborhoods here in Tumwater. So it seems like that PSE would be buying that because they want to keep the power grid. So I'm just making an assumption, but
right,
that would be a PSE purchase. That wouldn't be something the city's purchasing and would have the liability for. Because where's the city going to come up with the funds for?
I think our role, or planning commission and city council, is to help write a code to where are they going to put the thing.
Sure. And that was the next thing. I kind of got bothered by an equity issue. And I want to make sure that I heard it correctly.
Yes.
That there were some neighborhoods, and you mentioned mobile home parks and some rural areas that would not even be considered for being able to be part of an improved grid, because we had these, what PSE is saying, they want to put in these very large, that's what I'm hearing anyway, batteries.
They wouldn't be included in the grid improvement, but that they wouldn't be directly adjacent to the BESS system.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's just those
All right.
adjacent properties.
Okay, great.
It would still get the
I wanted to check. And I'm assuming that all of these connections will be underground.
That is part of our code, and so, yeah, that's one of the stipulations, that any new wiring would be undergrounded.
Already. And how long?
Just on that same point, because I think it's a little bit related to the location and hiding of these things. Maybe I don't understand the technology, but it seems to me that with distance from, whatever the power source in a battery is, with distance, there's a diminution in the amount of juice, right? Right? And so you can't put it too far away. to have any, enough.
That's why they are generally co-located with substations.
Right. So, I mean, the issue there is if those kinds of more rural areas or more sparse areas are too far away, they're still going to be left out of the backup.
Yeah.
So, and that's part of the reason that it's just those larger utility scale systems that are over 600 kilowatt. And then we wanted to make sure that there were opportunities for them to have local systems at the medium scale and at the residential scale. So there still are opportunities for them. But we also wanted to protect, on the other side of equity, since there are risks, we wouldn't want to put our low-income people in an adjacent or a
Totally agree with you.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we have both of those happening, but if they were a block away, no, I'm being a little facetious, but to be honest, I mean, it is just that adjacent property.
And that was sort of the flip side of my equity question was, once again, we're not going to put the hazardous thing where the fancy houses are. Okay, so I mean, I'm glad you're thinking of that. That's an important thing.
Add a clarification.
No, that's good. It's probably not a very intelligent question, but how long, if there is no storms, there's not a particular heat wave, the energy's sitting in those batteries, how long? Yeah, do they last? What's the implications of
About
that?
a 20% loss if it just sits there and it's not used.
Okay,
Over time. You get about 80% of what you put into it out of it.
I'd like to provide a clarification also. A residential system that is a battery hooked up to solar, that and a power outage can keep power for the building. Utility scale is to store it so that there isn't an outage or a brownout. It's not something that will then suddenly make one part of the community not impacted. It reduces the likelihood of there being a brownout or a blackout for everyone. It's still grid connected, so when the grid is down, the grid is down, but it reduces the amount of opportunities for the grid to be down because of demand crises.
I understand that, so maybe I didn't ask the question correctly, or I just don't understand it, but I think I was thinking more like you were. There's no reason for a demand. Nothing happened for 2 years.
There probably
There must be something cycling. Yeah, Brandon, you probably know better than I do.
You've got a cost of replenishing the energy in there.
Right.
It holds 100% over the course of a year.
Yeah,
It loses
okay.
20%, which means that you're paying for what it costs to recharge it. But that's true of any battery.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want that cycle rate to be going through, so you're constantly, not having such high peaks and low valleys. It's more
Even,
balancing.
yeah.
You buy batteries at the drugstore and put them on the shelf and try and use them 3 years later.
They're not.
Forget about it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Brick the battery if you don't use it, which is why it's useful to charge it, then discharge it, and keep them charged and discharged. Also, Chair, I do have an immediate response, a piece from the American Planning Association's BESS document, BESS about safety. If I may just read the quick quote, we'll still do the research, but just something so that it's at the table. According to the Electric Power Research Institute, there have been 22 BESS fires since 2012 in the U.S., but only 7 alone, but with 7 in 2023 alone. Some of the fires were minor, and the facilities being able to resume operation after the fire was suppressed, but several higher-profile fires or explosions that resulted in first responder injuries, no deaths, have raised awareness of risks and resulted in modified best practices and containment risks that are in place today. Public perception was also shaped by high-profile events and led to a perception that BESS presents risks or risks greater than any other energy storage land uses. So that's just a small bit about the number of fires, and that is directly from the APA on the topic.
I think it'll be important to have that kind of information as part of the public packet.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and for the small systems, just real quick, there's insurance premiums for homeowners. So it's not just, I'm just going to install this, you're going to pay more, most likely, with your insurance due to these factors.
And I'm asking these questions not because I disagree. I mean, I appreciate that there's a system there. I just, kind of representing the common man who doesn't know a whole lot about this and some of the concerns that they might have.
I don't mean to be coming off as defensive. I just have a direct communication style.
Oh, no, that's all right.
Commissioner Kirkpatrick.
Yep, we're moving on the direction of saying that we've got to be, transparent with the public on this. You know, we can't say, okay, here are the good things and, push away the bad. And one thing I think that, is difficult to explain to people is that BESS does not provide any power. In other words, it does, a diesel generator provides power. It adds to the grid. BESS gives you the capability of managing the power that's existing in the grid in a more efficient way. And most people don't understand that. They're comparing apples and oranges. Our data centers that are coming in, that are talking about putting in small nuclear power plants in order to manage them, is essentially what we're talking about here. This could be a alternative, but it's not really an alternative because this doesn't produce power. In order for this system to work, you've got to put a lot of solar power out there, or you've got to build additional power plants, which could be coal. In other words, you don't know what the source of the electricity is. If you look at Puget Sound Energy, there's still a sizable portion of our power that comes into the grid that is coming from coal. The system of using BESS to help in the evening when we have a high use of power and in the morning is already being handled by our hydroelectric power system, has been for decades. But we can't build any more hydroelectric power. So we're going to have to look for other sources as the need for electricity increases to other sources. BESS is merely a management tool. It's not a production.
It's the empty diesel generator.
But I think we need to explain that to the public. This system is not going to produce a whole bunch more power. It's going to allow us to manage the power that we generate from other sources.
And I have one thing here, just to see if we can clarify. So let's say 6 p.m. happens, we will have the grid, if the grid's up, and we will have the batteries both producing power for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So discharging, yeah.
You start to drain the power out of the
battery at that time to eliminate the brownout. So
same thing as when you open the gates on the hydroelectric power plant.
Exactly.
And you only run it 3 hours a day. You've got so much head.
Yep.
Use that up in 3 hours a day to hit where the low part, and it's an instantaneous source of power.
Yes.
I mean, that's another key. These batteries are an instantaneous source, like the gas. The gas backup that we have now is almost instantaneous to fill gaps in.
Yeah, and I think it's just multiple different pieces. I'm a proponent of it, and I've looked at it for my house with the solar because if I do lose power, I would love to be able to continue to produce because my solar goes back to the grid. It doesn't go into my house.
Right, so does mine.
So even though I have it,
Yeah.
so having the battery would be great because then it would be able to feed back in. So I think that this is a great conversation. And there's a lot to it, and it will be interesting to see
if we go beyond.
I think what we're all saying is we got to tell the public the whole story. Not assume that they're educated on it.
Right. Yeah, I think that's real key. We have about 10 minutes left before we either have to call it quits or decide we want to continue the conversation. I'm just letting people know.
Good, I'm done.
Okay. I think there's some really good points that are being brought up here. And you know, a lot of it having to do with, you know, every possible way you can think of to possible about what we know about these systems and how the city could benefit or have a cost in some fashion. I would like to just kind of point out on that last little discussion of the capacity of the batteries, if you will, of you know, with more, I don't know what that's another item, is how much demand for these things are there likely to be? We think Puget Sound Energy is interested for sure, but do we know, you know, we have one commissioner, maybe others who want batteries, but do we know how much demand we have for this? Because that's actually going to represent a draw on the rest of the system too, as people keep their systems
True, if
topped up,
they're doing
unless
everything-
they're
Yeah.
only hooked up to a solar or a little wind generator or something like that. So, you know, I think we need to gauge or find some way to have some data around if there's so many households that have this, don't have solar, how much draw is that going to add to the already pressing demand for electricity? And similar scenarios for, you know, small business, commercial, and so on. I think that's going to be an important piece of information for council. Other questions? Commissioner Edwards, did you have more you would like to say?
No, I just really appreciate the discussion.
Great. Does anybody want to keep discussing it tonight?
I just have one suggestion, and you guys will know better than I if that's possible. You've made this presentation to us, and you've heard our questions and the support, but also concerns. I'm fine with you changing your presentation for the council and adding some of that stuff in, so that you may not have to go through that kind of questioning again. Is that okay?
That's true, because we won't have 45 minutes to present to council, so we'll have to figure out how to strategize. What
Yeah.
I'll give us.
Okay.
Yeah. Figure out a way to work.
Perhaps we can make additional.
Without speeding through it, because I think that, I think you lose some of your import if you go too fast. Commissioner Kirkpatrick.
It came to mind, the presentation to city council. You gave us two options, you know, write, new code, which may well be circumvented, or write no code at all, but you didn't address the write no code at all. So if you want to quickly go to city council and say, okay, here are the options that we're trying to get you to choose. Do we write a code or do we not write a code? You've got to cover both sides of the story. You didn't address what would happen if we did not write a code.
Right.
And you need to tell the city council that, and then they'll decide whether they want to write a code or not.
Very good. Very good. Too. Yeah. Good point.
I was looking forward to your presentation. I think it's been a great.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Good job.
it's
been really great.
The data's all there. Good.
All right. Well, seeing as how we have,
They're seeking a recommendation.
Would you,
a little bit on this, go ahead. What was that?
We're seeking a recommendation. So are you comfortable making a recommendation for?
Oh, do you need an action from us then? Okay.
What are our options?
Our options are, I guess, do we recommend to city council to pursue a code
Or not.
or not? We haven't heard the flip
Don't do
side.
it.
Okay.
The not is the status quo
Second.
that we have now.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded by Commissioner Kirkpatrick and Vice Chair staff to make a recommendation to council that they entertain the idea of writing a code on battery energy storage systems. All right. Okay, and a third. All right. All in favor, please say aye.
All right.
Right.
Any opposed? Very good. Motion passes. Carry on to council. Very good.
Oh, no, we have 6 minutes. We
I
could.
know, exactly. All right. With our business being concluded, our meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Wow.
Brad's not here.
No, second week in a row. Thank
I
you,
know.
Grace.
Thank everybody.
Thank you, guys.
I know. 4 chairs is pretty brutal.
All right, thank you all.